Welcome to Altar of the Demo Gods. If you're wondering what advice from two experienced sales engineers sounds like, it's a little like this.
Welcome back to Altar of the Demo Gods. I'm Keith Wilson, joined by my co-host, John Morton. John, how you doing this evening?
It is a great evening, Keith. Happy to be alive.
Ahoy, hoy.
Ahoy, hoy.
You know I got it.
Ahoy, hoy.
The branding, man. We want merch.
We still need them as a sponsor.
Who?
Chips Ahoy.
For Chips Ahoy, hoy?
Or does the Long John Silver's on Ahoy, hoy? Who
You
counts
swing.
Ahoy, hoy?
You swing big for sponsorships. I'm thinking like Farmer's Dog. Yeah.
Dude, ever since Malort has let me down and now they're blowing up on social media, I got to swing high. So either Chips Ahoy or I don't even know if Long John Silver still exists. One of those. Whoever owns Ahoy, hoy.
I don't remember ever hearing about Long John Silver's going out of business, but I remember the last time I've seen one either.
Maybe they're resting like a dragon, sleeping in their den of fish and chips.
You know what I started a new hobby recently. As a techie guy, maybe some of you out there can relate. I feel like we tend to get away from the hobbies where we get to use our hands more and, maybe work up a sweat or something like that. And I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm just making this up. I picked up woodworking as a new hobby.
Nice.
Yeah, like woodworking construction, sort of. I want to learn how to make quality like furniture, I guess. Or I'm gonna start very simple. I did my first project already. It was a very basic, like built out of 2x4 and plywood workbench. Right. I don't have a workbench. I figured best thing to do, start with a workbench. So that's my new hobby. Of course, I had to pick it up in summer when it's almost 100 degrees outside every day.
Working. Do you have a garage, Keith?
I do.
Or are you just working out like in your yard?
No. I work in my garage. Yeah. So I get to work in the garage, but it's not like it's air conditioned or anything. It's still
mine either.
It's hot. It's shaded, right? So it's some shade,
and you got power, electric power.
Yeah.
So you can plug in your saws and equipment.
Everything's battery powered now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember growing up, learning about this stuff with my dad, right? And you had the circular saw that you'd have to run the cable to the to the extension cord, and you'd run that, and it would sometimes pop the breaker, or you'd accidentally cut the cable.
My brain just shut down with flashbacks of I'm not holding the flashlight right. So yes.
Yeah, but everything's battery powered now, right? So you settle on a brand, and then they all share the same type of battery, and everything's cordless and battery powered now. And
it was brought up recently. I am actually a DeWalt guy, so I'm just gonna own it.
Me too. So for those that don't know me,
DeWalt, we're looking for sponsorships, by the way. If you want to sponsor our podcast,
probably most of you don't know me. I used to be a mechanic. Before I got into computers, I was a mechanic. I worked at a Honda dealership when I was 16 years old. I worked there part-time. So my tool brand of choice, I won't buy them anymore because I don't do it professionally, so it doesn't make sense, is Snap-on. I don't think they're like a woodworking tool company.
I've seen them.
But yeah, super expensive tools, amazing tools, really good tools, but a little bit more than I need for home.
Yeah.
DeWalt is great. And a friend of the reason that whole thing came up was a friend of ours had sent out this chart of what tool companies own what. And DeWalt's owned by the same company that owns Mac, which is my second favorite brand of tools.
Right, tools, MAC.
Yeah,
tools,
right below Snap-on. I still have a couple of Mac tools. I might even have some of my Snap-on things, but I got rid of most of it. When I stopped working on cars.
That makes me wonder. Do you think guys that sell tools like Mac Tools and DeWalt, do they consider themselves technical sales?
Probably
I just
not.
blew your mind, but I'm just curious. I mean, it's a
Maybe.
job.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Hey, we should get one of them on this show.
I never thought of them as technical sellers. Now I haven't been doing it for quite a while.
That blew your mind, Keith. I took you down a path we weren't ready for.
No, you're right. All right, episode over. Sorry, guys, we're done.
Well, I'm thinking batteries. I'm thinking tools. It's a technical role.
Sure.
You have to have some expertise technically.
It's not technical sales. I don't think it's that technical. I think it's more of a sales job. Yes, you have to have understanding and know-how of tools, but I mean, you have to do that to sell pharmaceuticals too, right? Like, same with selling cars, right? Like, I have to have some understanding of the different features and how cars work. So,
it's like Deadpool. We're crossing the fourth boundary, the fourth wall of what is technical sales. But nonetheless,
I can't wait for that movie to come out. We're over 5 minutes in the show. And we haven't even talked anything about sales.
we're already distracted.
I can't wait for that movie to come out, though. I have a feeling my son is going to try and sneak in that movie. He's 13. He won't stop talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. I've already told him, like, there's not a shot in hell you're going to see that movie. I'm sorry. I'm a good parent.
Really?
You're 13. You're not going to see a Deadpool.
What do you remember my story about my flashback about not holding the flashlight, right? This is going to be not taking me to see Deadpool and Wolverine, Dad.
I just took him to see the Impractical Jokers live. I push some limits, but I'm not taking him to Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah. So in the last episode, non sequitur, we're doing great on the transitions. We get slap happy because we record. Well, for me anyway, we record past my bedtime. So I get a little slap happy. Anyway, our last episode, we talked about discovery, which is super important. So if you missed our last episode, go back, listen to episode 32 on discovery calls, discovery meetings. We talked about some of the main points that I picked up on were being prepared, right? So making sure that you've done your research on who you're going to talk to, the company that you're talking to, and to try and get somewhat of an idea of what their pain points are. But I mean, you're going to straight up ask them a lot of questions to really dig up what that pain is anyway. And you're going to do that by asking open-ended questions using, we'll call it the TED method, as John's talked about, where you're going to, tell me about, explain to me, describe to me, use that for your questions. And to make sure that you're actively listening, which is the other half of, you're going to ask the questions, but you need to actively listen to the response. So you pick up and actually use the information that you're getting from asking those wonderful questions. Great ways to do that are, writing notes. So take notes on what the person's saying. Obviously, you're not writing down every single word, but you are taking notes that you can recall and what they were saying much easier later. And it also kind of forces you to focus. And then grip onto the fascination that we have just as humans in other people's stories to really lead into that and listen to their story. John, what can you share from our last episode?
Very similar vein, right? Come prepared, do your research, have an agenda, meaning, what are we going to do during this time to get what we need to know, and then try to get to that know, right? We're trying to get to next steps. What does good look like coming out of this meeting, even if this isn't the right person or the right time or opportunity for them.
Yeah. So if you missed that episode, you can get it for free along with all of our other episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, or just by going right to demogodspod.com. In this episode, we're going to talk to something that I know just a little bit about, but John knows more about. So we're going to utilize his expertise. And this is Customer Verifiable Outcomes, or CVOs. So obviously, today's or this week's acronym of the week. And I love how we have this acronym of the week is just kind of random. It's not like it's every week. This week,
Pee Wee Herman evolution.
It's CVOs. CVOs.
Yeah.
Customer Verifiable Outcomes. John, tell me about CVOs. Tell me about CVOs.
We're going to keep it very simple, and we're going to keep it very on track based on this conversation. So Keith just explained to us that he has a new woodworking hobby. CVOs include very basic things like, I understand you picked up a new hobby, Keith, and I understand some of your customer verifiable outcomes may be in line with your needs being chopping wood and sanding wood. So if I'm selling a solution, verifiable outcomes may be the product does I sell that I'm selling, does it cut up the wood you need? Does it sand the wood you need? Those are very yes or no binary questions that can help us understand you as a customer. If you're buying something from me, does it accomplish the task you are going for?
Okay. That seems like a pretty simple explanation. I feel like I'm missing something because that did seem almost too simple.
It has to be that simple. If you can keep it simple, you'll win. Now here's where the strategy comes in, Keith. There are always ways to associate this and think about it. So number one, when we're talking about the product we have, we want to say number one, yes, Keith, as my buyer, I can solve your problem. And there are 3 ways I always break it down. I always say, here are the things that we do that everyone else does.
Sorry.
Here,
39-year-old man, that still makes me laugh. Go ahead.
I know. I dropped the joke earlier and somebody told me the same thing in Teams. I was like, wait a minute. So here are the things that we do the same as everyone else. And that's cut wood. Okay. We do that the same between all these tools. I don't know all these saws, but we do these the same. Here's what we do differently and better. That's the value prop.
So it's possible that multiple vendors all have the same CVO.
Exactly. So we want to say to our buyers, here's what we do the same, here's what we do better, and here's what we don't do. If you can articulate those 3 things to a buyer like you, right? Or a buyer like anybody that you're trying to sell to, that helps us with that CVO. What are the verifiable outcomes we could do? You said you can do this thing the same as everyone else. Yep, we can prove that. You said you do this better or you don't do this at all.
So let's go back to the woodworking tools thing then, right?
Okay.
So my CVO is I need to be able to sand. Okay? Well, there's 50 different tool lines that all make sanders that can all sand.
Right.
Okay. Well, I need to be able to sand at X amount of RPMs, and I need it, and then I also, or I guess in reverse, let's take away from the customer point of view and talk about the value prop side of it from sales now. Okay. We make a sander that will sand for you, but it also spins at X amount of RPMs, which is faster than anybody else's. So you get the smoothest finishes. We also collect dust at a rate better than anybody else's to keep those fine particles out of the air and out of your lungs, yada, yada, yada. Right? Yep. So right there, I want to pause because we're trying to differentiate this for our audience here.
Exactly.
There's 2 terms here that are both important. One is CVOs, customer verifiable outcomes, and value propositions. Right?
Yes.
So CVOs it sounds to me, again, I'm not too familiar with CVOs, but it sounds like these are very general, could apply across multiple vendors. And then the value proposition is you telling me why you're better, right?
Yes.
Why it's worth it to spend more money possibly with
there now,
right? Because you have more value, right?
So what I know and what I've learned and what I hope our listeners are trying to wrap their minds around is, I like to sell value. We're not trying to race to the zero, race to the bottom and selling a commoditized product that anybody can have, right? What's the name of that? Harbor Freight. I'm not trying to sell Harbor Freight hardware. If you do, hey man, kudos. I'm happy for you. I'm trying to sell you this DeWalt setup where I'm asking a premium for what I'm selling. So those 3 points of what do we do the same as everyone else? What do we do better? That's the value prop to Keith's point. And then what do we not do? If we can establish those things, we know immediately who our buyer is and what they're expecting from the outcome. Our customer may say, I want a Harbor Freight 3-cent screwdriver that's going to break the first time I use it. Okay, maybe that's not who I want to sell to. or I want a Stanley screwdriver that can withstand 400 gigawatts of energy if I plug into the wrong thing. So establishing what Keith said, that value proposition, is absolutely what we're going for when we're trying to establish those CVOs. What are you looking for as a verifiable outcome? Do you want me to put my screwdriver literally into this 400 gigawatt, machine to see if it can withstand the energy? Or do you just want a 3-cent Harbor Freight screwdriver? So to your point, Keith, exactly that. If we want to establish and sell value, which I think we're trying to do with our podcast, we're not just trying to sell commodity, we're asking for a premium. You can do some of these things.
Now, you brought up something in there that's important. You said what you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important that you tell the customer, okay, where you define for them, this is definitively what we do not do? Why is that important?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to this use case. I know we keep beating on it, so I hope our listeners can just roll with it. But let's say, for example, Keith has invested a ton of money into DeWalt batteries. And what he's trying to do is find some sort of tool that he can use the exact same battery in. So I want to be upfront and honest with Keith as a buyer and tell him, Keith, your battery is not going to work in my tool. Are you okay with that? If you're not...
For every time I'd heard that.
Yeah. If we got to find a 220 plug and plug this bad boy in, it's going to cost you more money. Are you in or are you out? Again, I'm trying to get to the no, right?
Sure.
So I want to be very clear about what I don't do as well. I don't want to level set some bad expectations, be like, yeah, Keith, you buy this thing on Amazon from China, it'll modify your DeWalt battery to fit. I'm setting you up for failure. So I'm trying to be honest in that too.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So how do you figure out what these CVOs are? Because my experience, from what you're telling me, my experience with customers is they don't even necessarily know. Or maybe they do, but they don't fully understand the value proposition.
Back to discovery, man. Back to the discovery about what you're looking for, what problem you're trying to solve, how do we solve it, right? So again, good discovery questions, get there. But once you've established the fact that, to bring you a very basic again, I need to cut wood and I need to sand wood. All right, these are outcomes. Is there some medium where you can come to an agreement where if I can do those things for you, you're going to buy from me? Those to me are verifiable outcomes. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be everything. If there's some happy medium there, and it's worth the effort, because again, we're selling value proposition, that's in discovery as well.
Now, if you're bringing up those CVOs throughout the rest of the deal, are you also tying value prop back every time with that? Or is it just stating CVO? Or are we just stating CVOs over and over?
Absolutely.
I feel like if you just restate the CVO over and over and over again, then you're the same as everybody else if you're not reminding them of why it's more valuable to have your product.
To make it personal for me, right? So if I'm going to go buy a new set of tools, what I'm trying to help the customer do is establish a business case to whoever has the purchasing authority. So in my household, if I just go tell my wife, I'm going to buy this whole new tool set for $50K, hey, that's probably not getting approved, Doug. Just letting you know right now. That is not. But if we have a very rock solid business case where we can come and say, here were the customer verifiable outcomes, they prove them and they have demonstrated the value in a business case, it's easier for a buyer to sell internally this purchase of what they're trying to go for where there's more value.
Well, yeah, selling internally, having somebody that can sell internally for you is crazy important. So getting them to articulate value, I feel like you spend a good portion of your time in these meetings is really just aligning CVO to your value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as it gets more and more formal in the sales process, you want to make sure that those CVOs are aligned more and more with your value proposition so that nobody else is telling
I see we try a fun thought experiment here, Keith.
Okay.
With you and your kids. And you're driving home and you're driving by McDonald's and they're like, Dad, can't we just stop and get some McDonald's? And you tell them, we got McDonald's at home. Don't you expect them to bring some unique criteria about why you should go out of your way to stop and get the McDonald's when you got McDonald's at home. So you need these internal sellers to be equipped to say,
Right.
Dad, here's why McDonald's is so much more better than the McDonald's we got at home.
Yeah.
So it's basically the same idea.
Especially if you're selling to McDonald's.
Right? Exactly. So, it's not too far-fetched. I know we think about it too much, but again, I break it down to those three things. What do we do the same? What do we do better? And what do we not do? Dad, McDonald's, that scenario, your kids learn this from us. They're going to be pitching you every day.
Well, and I think if you find a way to measure CVOs,
Mm-hmm.
which is ultimately going to help you when you go to close the deal, right? By tying some sort of metric or measurement to what you're doing. And you can find a way to make sure those lean more to your value prop, again, by articulating why your value prop is so important. Like, if you haven't noticed, the key to all of this is establishing your value proposition early on and educating the customer as to why that is the right way, or the best way to
100%.
right? So by repeating this throughout and by having metrics already planned in your head that align best to your value proposition, it's only going to make you a winner. Do you have any tips or thoughts on establishing metrics around CVOs?
Yeah, man. So those are totally relevant to the industrial vertical. Again, back to discovery, why it matters who we're talking to, but everybody can lean on a couple things, either improving processes, right? Or, saving dollars by products. So either you can streamline a process and saving time, or I don't know if there's a new term for it, but man hours, right? The time it takes to develop something or the time it takes to roll something out. Those are tangible cost savings in time, but there's also dollar value. What can I save tangibly by buying a different product that comes in at a lesser price that solves the same problem, or I get a unique value prop out of it that saves me tangible dollars, whether that's something like insurance or future investments. So monetarily and time-wise, those are the two tangible, things I like to look at. Money and time.
Well, and so I think the first metric that pops into mind for that, and probably the one that customers, especially the ones that are closer to the finance side, are going to look at is return on investment, right? What is my ROI? I'm not doing the for that one, not yet, because that's not this week. But your return on your investment, your ROI metrics are going to be important. So if you can find a way to show how your product will provide some sort of a return, which John and I work in security, so that's not necessarily easy to do. A lot of the times we have to do it in terms of risk mitigation,
right?
Is what we have to speak in terms of. But if you do sell a product that can help add to a bottom line or reduce time or things like that, you get ROI. And actually, we have an episode that we're planning. I don't know when we're going to record it, but look forward soon where we're going to talk about ROI calculators and the benefits of those. Plenty of companies do them. And John, we've talked about this before. I'd love to have Charles Herring back on again. Their product, Witfu, their security product, has like ROI is baked into this, like an ROI calculator is baked into the tool itself. Forget about the one that you use on their website. You can continue to use a return on investment calculator with active information in there, and it's a powerful statement, right? If I can connect anything to finance or business terms and make a metric out of it, it's going to be useful in demonstrating.
1,000%. Yeah. I think there's one more to the intangible, and I'll bring it back to my McDonald's analogy to wrap this up for you here, Keith. So when we've identified a champion, we've done the discovery, and we know they have pain. This is how, if I was Keith's child, I would pitch him on McDonald's versus the McDonald's at home. And it's kind of an intangible metric, but just bear with me for a second. If I'm saying, hey, Dad, and I'm in the back seat kicking it for the past 45 minutes in Atlanta traffic, just kicking a seat. If we stop at McDonald's and it takes us 5 minutes to get dinner, That's going to save you the pain of prepping dinner for the next hour and washing dishes and watching me not eat and not like what I have. But 5 minutes at McDonald's, I'm in and I'm going to eat it all. Right? So there's intangible solutions.
If only my kids knew how to sell, right? Because they're just like, well, I like it better.
And that's where we're trying to educate our buyers as sellers to say, don't just say you like it better. Say, hey, Dad, think about how much it sucks to wash dishes, how much time that costs, how much money it costs with water and soap, and 5 minutes at McDonald's, you just throw it in the trash and you can go straight to sleep. So that's the value.
Until you wake up 3 hours later with stomach cramps.
That's their problem at that point. But the point is, that's value selling. If we can wrap it up with that, that's value selling is, comparing those things. What do we do the same? What do we do better? And what do we not do? Right?
I think that's a great point for us to exit out on. So this is where we're going to come to your favorite part of the show. By you, I mean the royal you listening, not John. John would love to keep going for as long as possible on the show if we could. Where we talk about
Rogan style.
Where we talk about, I feel like that needs to be said by like a bald gorilla that wants to fight you in a cage match. And he just wears a shirt that says Joe Rogan style. Like that's what I picture when you say that's my AI generated version of if you were to enter in the prompt Joe Rogan style. This is the part of the episode where we talk about where we summarize for you some of the main points that we brought up, some of the things that we've learned. So CVOs are pretty general things. CVOs. Customer Verifiable Outcomes are usually pretty general and broad. We talked about them in terms of like for a sander, I need to be able to sand, right? Well, plenty of sanders can do that. The value proposition is what you do best to match that CVO. So my sander also has an excellent filter on it. It does all these things and sands at this speed, does all these things, right? So that's the value proposition. You need to be tying your value proposition to the CVOs as frequent and often as possible throughout the process so that the customer doesn't forget. And then also use metrics. And anytime you can tie metrics to dollars or time, savings or earnings, that's helpful. And especially if you look at it from the terms of the business person in ROI, right? If I give you $20, how quickly am I going to get that $20 back? Or what exactly am I getting for that $20? John, what do you got to tell us about CVOs?
Keep it simple about CVOs. Can I solve the problem you have? Apologies. Can I solve the problem you have? Yes or no? If I can, 3 simple things. What do I do the same as everyone else? What do I do better? And what do I not do? If we can come to an agreement on that and I can demonstrate for you those things, 99% of the time someone's willing to buy, especially if we can help them build a business case about why Keith should stop at McDonald's versus cooking the McDonald's at home. That's my value prop.
And it's an excellent one. If you enjoyed this week's episode learning about CVOs, join us again next week. We do this every week. So like, share, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or your podcast. If you're listening to us on wherever you get your podcast, make sure you leave a nice comment for us or a nice review for us. That really helps us out, helps grow our audience so other people can learn all about this stuff too. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about sales tools, specifically Salesforce. We're really going to get into that and how sales engineers use Salesforce's, or SFDC as they call it in the biz. If you enjoy topics like that, you can find out more by going to our website, demogodspod.com. If you think you'd be a good guest for the show or have questions for us, you can email us at demogodspod@gmail.com. Again, get us wherever you find podcasts on YouTube or on our website, demogodspod.com. Until then, we'll talk to you next week on Altar of the Demogods.